You're listening to the Weekly Brew.
Now joining us on the Weekly Brew is Pat Forde, who is a college sports columnist for Yahoo Sports and also covers a variety of other topics such as horse racing and USA swimming. Pat, thanks for joining us this week.
My pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you.
You actually wrote an article last week on Idaho State senior sprinter Shelby Erdahl, who ruptured her Achilles during a 400-meter race and managed to actually finish. And, while her story is quite phenomenal, it was something that you wrote a little bit further in that article that really stuck out to me. And you said, quote, "If you're a college sports fan suffering from scandal fatigue, I don't blame you. Assaults at Baylor, strippers at Louisville, an Alabama football star in possession of stolen handgun, endless investigations, North Carolina and Mississippi. Even Jerry Sandusky made a recent return to the headlines." And Pat, when I just look at the college sports landscape, to me, it's just very disheartening. And I guess my question for you is, why does it seem that there are more and more incidents every single year, perhaps even more so than in some of our professional sports leagues?
Well, it is discouraging. I agree with you that we seem to have so many negative stories, and maybe that some of that is perception. Maybe there aren't more, but it sure feels like it, and they feel, significant. I mean, obviously what's transpired at Baylor is very significant. What Mississippi and North Carolina have been charged with is very significant from an NCAA rules standpoint. What Louisville is probably facing will be significant. So, these are big cases, and I think they're troubling in terms of the overall tenor of college sports. And I think you could say maybe there's been more than in the pro ranks because there's simply more teams. Secondly, you've got younger athletes that are probably more prone to making bad decisions. Thirdly, they don't have $1 million salaries to protect that maybe would govern them from making, bad decisions a little bit. So, I think there are a few of those factors involved. But the other thing, the amount of money that is at stake now in college sports through media rights deals, through apparel deals, whatever, for schools, I think has even further ratcheted up the just win mentality, that there is so much money at stake now that people are probably willing to overlook more things, hope they can get away with more things, and take more risks on players that probably shouldn't be involved in representing a university. So I think that just the skyrocketing revenues over the last 5-6 years has probably played a part in people cutting more corners and taking more chances.
Of course, the spotlight right now is on Baylor, but as many commentators have noted, this happens all around the country. I'm wondering, do you see this as a systemic problem at, most, if not all, universities and local police departments that surround them around the country? And then where do you see the media playing into this as well?
Yeah, well, I think campus assaults, sexual assaults on campus, regardless of athletic or not, are a major issue on campuses. And I think we're just now kind of getting our arms around the prevalence of it and frequency of it, because I think it's being reported more, and there are more women who are willing to come forward and more universities that are willing to take on these cases. And that's kind of one of the disheartening things about Baylor, has been the seeming inability of the school and even the police department to jump in fully on this and really, tackle it and face it and do something about it. So, I think that I do think that it is a growing issue out there. There's been more media coverage. I think there's been, pretty aggressive media coverage. I did a lot of work on the Jameis Winston allegations at Florida State, and they've had many other problems down there as well. And so I think that, you go from there, and there are things that we probably need to cover. It's more fun to go cover games and go to exciting atmospheres where everybody's excited, and that's what we got into the business for. But you're not doing your job, in my opinion, if you're not paying attention to the other side of the coin too, and some of the issues that are out there in college sports.
The stark reality is that there's only going to be more money in college athletics. They're only going to be more valuable as programs in the future. So, is this just the reality of college sports now? Is there any coming back from this ledge, or is this just kind of going to be the state of things in the future to come?
Well, that's a good question, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as long as the financial stakes are this high, I mean, I think we are certainly at risk of having programs say, you know what, whatever it takes, whatever we need to do to get these guys, these players, even if they're not the kind of people you would necessarily want on a college campus if they weren't good at athletics, or there's any number of moral and ethical backbends that schools have been willing to make to bring in students that weren't good students or athletes that weren't good students and athletes that aren't good people. So most of them, and I will say this needs to be said, and I think you guys would concur, that for the most part, on a team of 85 guys, most of them are good guys. Most of them are there to try to get an education and are and handle themselves well and represent their school and themselves well. So it is not as if every player at Baylor or at North Carolina or wherever you want to look is corrupting the ideals of the university. It's unfortunate that it happens that way, but when there is enough of a critical mass that occurs, that's when you have to look and say, what is the problem and what would it take to correct it? And, I don't know whether we're on course for a truly major correction at this point, and if we ever will get there.
Specifically with the Baylor situation, that's kind of near and dear to our hearts. I mean, we know people who have been impacted by this, and it's just a crazy situation. And, for me as an alum of the university, it's very disheartening to see what's going on and just the lack of response from the university. I'm curious, since you do have a platform in the national media, what would you suggest needs to actually happen for not only Baylor to reform and become a leader in terms of protecting the safety and protecting the safety of women on campus and just actually following through with Title IX? I mean, what actions need to be taken by the university?
Yeah. I mean, I think that obviously there needs to be enough sunlight shed on what's going on so that people know, because that will increase the accountability. If people don't know about assaults and brawls that occurred because police reports have been pulled from the files, or people who are in positions who have been told about these assaults have done nothing, to players who have been accused of these things, then if they're allowed to get away with that behavior, then it's going to keep happening. But if it comes out, if people are open about it, if there are people on campus who want to know what's going on more than just, hey, my football team is good, and are willing to question what's going on, then, I think that when the questions are asked and people's feet are put to the fire, then you'll see action, you'll see response. And, quite frankly, I think it's sad for Baylor, which is, a well-respected academic institution, a prominent religious institution, that it took basically ESPN Outside the Lines camping out down there and talking to a lot of people and finding out the extent of the issues before action started to be taken, but at least it happened. And so, I think you need a watchdog media that's not just there to cheer for the team, that's there to cover the good and the bad. You need people on campus who aren't afraid to speak up. You need a board of regents that will take action if it needs to. You need a school president and administration that's going to listen to people and do something when they're told about what's going on. You need a football coach who's willing to face the facts that maybe you can't get every player you want because some of them shouldn't be on campus. It's multi-layered. There's a lot of things that need to happen, but hopefully we're heading in that direction. But again, I'll hold my breath and wait and see.
Well, like you said, there is the good and the bad, of course, and with all the outside the lines reporting and the scandals and so forth that you made reference to, it's easy to forget that there's actually football to be played, and not too far from now, actually. So there's a weekend opening slate that is just mind-boggling to me compared to what we've seen in the past. It's not powder puffs; these are real games. And I'm curious, do you think that the College Football Playoffs committee has had an impact on scheduling up? Has it had the impact we hoped it would in terms of teams playing other good teams, particularly early in the season?
Yes. The playoff has already paid significant benefits in terms of seeing better games and better schedules. And it's amazing to me it took this long, but college football finally figured out the first weekend of the season is ours. It's all ours. There's no NFL. Let's play great games. And we started to see it maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago with some of the neutral site games, and Alabama was kind of a forerunner of that. They'll go play in Atlanta against somebody else from some other conference. And now, people have seen, okay, we don't have to play a true road game, and we're going to get paid a lot of money, so let's schedule them. So now you've got those games in Houston, in Dallas, in Orlando, in Atlanta. Those are proliferating. And while I still think there's nothing better than a good on-campus game, at least they're good games. And so we're getting to see those. The strength of schedule is finally becoming, I think, legitimately more valued and more important as a criteria for getting into the playoff. And so teams, we've seen conferences basically legislate that you have to play better non-conference schedules. And some schools have had to be dragged into it kicking and screaming. Some are probably still going to resist. But you know what? It's been better for college football to have these good games. I can't wait for that first weekend.
So I do my best to be objective and professional, but the highlight to me, obviously, as a U of H alum, is the Oklahoma-Houston game here in Houston, NRG Stadium. And I'm looking at that, and my heart's racing. That's a huge game for the program. Just from an outsider's perspective, what does it do for U of H, and particularly that bid to get into a Power 5 conference if they're able to take that game against Oklahoma to start the season?
Well, it is a immense opportunity. There's no doubt about it. And you know what Houston did with their big opportunities last year, year one under Tom Herman, is why they're in this position they're in. Why even anybody is talking about them as a potential, Big 12 entity, because they went to Louisville and they won in the American Conference, and then they go to the bowl game and they handle Florida State, and then biggest of all, you keep Tom Herman. So those things are just huge. And now this is the next step. You start the season with a absolute blue blood matchup, and if you can win that, once the momentum just keeps rolling, and Houston, it'll be interesting. Houston's already on everybody's radar to start the year, which hadn't been the case in a long time. That's a good thing. That's what winning a big bowl game does for you. And now, if you roll it over and you can beat Oklahoma to start the year, hey, the sky's the limit. You can really look at it and say, what can't this team do? The rest of the schedule, there's going to be people that will take pot shots at it. But if you get that first big marquee win, all things are possible.
Another game that's going on that weekend would be the UCLA Texas A&M game. And Texas A&M, if you talk about Houston being a team that's trending upwards, Tom Herman being a name that's trending upwards, Texas A&M seems to be exactly the opposite. Just from looking from the outside in there, what is happening with that program with Kevin Sumlin, who just a few years ago, obviously coming out of Houston, was one of the most heralding coaching hires in the nation?
Yeah, it's almost like it was too much too fast for Sumlin. Things just happened too easily, and they got, they were sloppy or cocky or what, but the early success has been followed with such, player turnover, coaching turnover, disappointments, on the field, and inability to field a good defense for a long time. And on top of that, too, you kind of see what happened with Johnny Manziel going, and you wonder, okay, exactly how much did they put up with from him? That I can't imagine he got to the NFL and all of a sudden became this wildly irresponsible, self-destructive guy. And there were a couple minor incidents at A&M, but I'm wondering what else transpired that we don't even know about. And, the inability to find the next quarterback. They found a lot of quarterbacks, but none of them have stayed, and none of them have been that guy. So, it's been very puzzling to me. I thought Kevin Sumlin was a guy whose career was absolutely on track to be a superstar. And I'm not saying he still can't be, but he got paid a ton of money very quickly to get the program kind of up and running in the SEC, and now the follow-through is not there, and he'll be one of the coaches that enters this season under a lot of pressure.
Now, Pat, we mentioned at the top of the show that your primary focus is working with college sports, but you also do a lot in terms of, swimming coverage. And the Rio 2016 Summer Olympics are, under 75 days away. And when I look at the big names in swimming, of course, you've got Michael Phelps coming out of retirement, Ryan Lochte, you've got Nathan Adrian. Those are the big names kind of heading into Rio, but none of them are ranked at that, top spot in the world right now. And I'm kind of curious, from your perspective and just covering the sport, where does the men's team kind of stack up this year? Is the rest of the world finally catching up? And on that note, do you think the majority of the swimming stars right now are just on the women's side with Missy Franklin and Katie Ledecky?
It's a very good question, and it is wait and see, and we're going to see in about a month when the Olympic trials start in Omaha. And the Americans, it has been the basic formula is, gradually build towards the trials, and then we'll show you what we've got. And if there are huge performances there, that'll probably correct the perception that is out there that the Americans are vulnerable, and especially the men are vulnerable because they're all old. But we'll see. We got to wait and see because they haven't done it. You're right. I mean, the times of most of the American men are largely very unimpressive at this point compared to the world competition. And these guys are older, longer in the tooth, which makes me actually think they're probably smarter and will time it. They're not going to go out and just throw down huge times in big races in March and in April, knowing that really doesn't mean anything. They're going to wait until it's time, but they've got to do it in Omaha. If not, they're going to go into the Olympics, as huge underdogs, really, quite frankly, to the Australians and several other nationalities. So there will be a lot of pressure on, but these have been guys who have historically risen to the occasion. We'll see if they do it again.
Pat, one name that everyone's thinking about when they think about the USA men's swimming team is Michael Phelps. Do you think that any of his disciplinary issues outside of the sport have affected his readiness to come into Rio and perform to his previous level?
They've helped him. They've absolutely helped him. Being left off the national team that went to the World Championships last year was huge motivation for him. And he went down to San Antonio in the national championships and just dropped bomb after bomb after bomb. It was amazing. I was there and I watched him, and he swam like he hasn't since, probably 2009. So if he can get back to that level, then we will see one more great performance from Michael Phelps. I'm not sure he can quite hit those high notes again. We'll find out. But if he does, he could be looking at winning 3 individual events at Rio and, possibly 2 or 3 relay events as well. I mean, he could still walk out of this somehow, some way at his age after retiring twice and going through all he's been through with 6 gold medals. I think that would be a lot to ask, but I think he's going to win multiple gold medals when all's said and done.
So, Pat, I'm looking here, the Wetzel to 40 Daily Podcast. So you're a podcaster as well, and we love podcasting, obviously. It's why we do it. It's sort of my raison d'etre. To you, what's the impetus for doing a podcast? What's enjoyable about it, or what's different than sort of your day-in, day-out stuff that gets you out there to do it, and will get you back out there again in August?
Well, I mean, I love, basically, the way we do our podcast with Wetzel and I is it is almost no preparation, and we don't take it seriously. We seriously, we just, like, when you're doing it daily, it can be a bit of a grind. And so, we would tape at like 10 or 11 at night, and we'd start texting about 9:30. It's like, what do you got? I got this, I got that. What do you got? Yeah, this and that. Okay, let's go. And we just do it and, go about 30 minutes and just kind of BS back and forth on, whatever the main sports topics of the day are, because we wanted to be first thing in the morning, basically your daily morning radio show without the commercials or without more commercials, and just have those things ready at 5 a.m. and then throw in an element of the completely absurd. I mean, like we did multiple segments on Burger King introducing the hot dog, and we actually did the taste testing of the hot dogs. We're big on food, we're big on beer, we're big on stupidity and silliness or whatever's going on out there. So, I think podcasts can be a lot of things, and they're really cool, but if they're not fun, then you're kind of defeating the purpose. And especially for us, we write, a lot of relatively serious columns, and it's nice to sometimes just be able to chuck that aside and talk about just be a little bit more frivolous. So that's kind of our aim and our goal with it, and also, believe it or not, maybe making some money in the process.
But Pat, we definitely appreciate you taking the time and joining us this week on the Weekly Brew podcast. And for those that are interested in following your work on Yahoo and following you on social media, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, our stories are at sports.yahoo.com, and you can find them there or from the Yahoo homepage. I'm on Twitter a lot at Yahoo 40. It's YAHOOFORDE. And I'm on Facebook as well, so you can find me there. So there's my stuff's out there. Hopefully people can locate it.
Yeah, definitely go check it out, especially when we get to football season. We have the 40 minutes, the 40-yard dash coming up with football and basketball. But, Pat, we appreciate you joining us on the podcast this week, and enjoy the coverage heading up to college football season and the Rio Olympics.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.